we're looking now at the idea of attacking from closed guard in situations where you don't have a massive advantage in terms of height and angle. Our favorite ways to attack from closed guard, things like side scissor, the high cross, all involve big advantages in terms of angle and height. That's certainly the preferred way to attack, but let's be honest, a lot of our opponents are really good at following our movements, and when you try to get an angle, they follow you. You try to get height, they push you down. And so sometimes you have to attack without big benefits, big advantages in terms of height and angle. We've looked at the top lock as one great way to attack. The trap triangle is another. First, we need to learn what is a trap triangle. Don't worry, that's pretty obvious. And second, how we're going to get into it. Okay, you guys all are familiar with the idea of a triangle. The front triangle, the one we're all most familiar with, just rotate buddy, involves from here locking up the figure 4 with our legs, like so. And it's mostly used as a strangle and an arm lock attack. Okay? Now, this stands in contrast to a trap triangle. Let's come around this way. In a trap triangle, I have the leg configuration of a triangle, but I do not have the figure of 4. I simply cross my ankles. So it's essentially the beginnings of a triangle. I've beaten my opponent's arm, I've got my legs in position, but I do not yet have a stranglehold because my legs have not achieved the figure 4 yet. We just have our ankles crossed. Okay? In most cases, where we go to lock a trap triangle, if my triangle is a right-legged triangle, the right leg is responsible for the strangulation, then the right foot will be underneath. If it's a left triangle, where my left leg is responsible for the strangulation, then my left foot will be underneath. Okay? Now, from the trap triangle, you have many good ways to attack. The most obvious one, of course, is to shift into the figure of 4 and strangle people. But it's not the only one. In addition, there's many arm locks from here. And of course, it's a great control position as well. This is particularly well suited to people with very short, thick legs. It's much easier to lock a trap triangle than it is many of the other methods of control for short-legged people. When Jay goes to pull away, I just focus on keeping my knees pinched around his head. Jay, if you change the angle. What I don't want is for you to be able to see Jay's shoulder. If you can see Jay's shoulder, that means he can punch his arms around into good defensive positions. That means he can come forward and posture up, cause all kinds of problems for me. So as much as possible, we want to start covering our training partner's shoulder. So you can only see the head and you can't see the shoulders. They're obscured by my legs. Okay? As Jay goes to move around, I want to focus on pulling in with my knees. He goes to stand up and my knees pull inwards. He tries to pull me up off the floor. It's tough. You've got excellent control of this guy. He drops back down to his knees, tries to stack me. It's hard. You can misdirect him over to the side. Okay, he goes to yank his arm out as vigorously as possible. My hips are up high. So it's almost like a guard position, but with your legs in a triangle position rather than a classic guard. Instead of around the waist, you're around the head and shoulders. Because you're around the head and shoulders, you're controlling the end of the lever. Okay, so you have a much stronger pull and domination of your opponent's posture. If you can get to this position, you're halfway to a triangle and you're halfway to a bunch of different arm locks, omoplatas, etc., etc. So it's a very, very good controlling position, and it's a great position to launch into your submissions. First big question, how do we get there? My favorite method are always collar and wrist methods. Okay? Why do I favor collar and wrist methods? Well, first, they create a really easy dilemma that you can use to your advantage. And secondly, they control posture. When I was young, we would often set up triangles grabbing 2 wrists, where you would push one wrist and pull the other. If my opponent's naive and keeps his head at the same height, that's really effective. You can go right up and do triangles. But if this guy has any knowledge, the second he sees this happen, he's going to posture up and away. It's going to be hard for me to throw to a triangle now. So a much better method in general is to control the wrist, like so, and to control posture through the collar. So that when I stuff the wrist and he goes to posture up, he runs right into your collar tie. That's going to give you an extra second, and in a combat situation, a second is an awfully long time, to throw your legs up and into the trap triangle position. Okay? In addition, when you control the wrist, you have the ability to push in, and if you feel resistance, you just take it outwards. When he tries to bring the hand back in, It's almost impossible from here. So it's easy for us now to throw our leg from the inside and over the top. So the basic dilemma is between compressing the hand inwards and going over the leg, over the arm, or taking the wrist outwards and going inside and over. Okay, so we're either inside and over or outside and over. Okay, that's the basic dilemma we work with. So once again, we start off, training partner in here, we get a hold of our training partner's wrist and lock it up. We immediately go either inside or outside. When we control the collar tie, rotate, we always make sure we go to rotate and grip the far side of the neck. Don't just put your hand on the back of the head, okay? Get a good grip here. Should feel almost around the carotid artery. When he goes to yank out, it's gonna be tough. Now we either stuff it in and then split our legs and kick over the top. Or if we feel there's resistance, we push outwards. We shimmy and kick over the top. From here, in either case, we lock up the trap triangle. The second we get to the trap triangle, you can let go of his damn hand. Don't be the guy that holds on to the arms the whole time. It's not helping anymore. You need those arms to form angles on people, okay? Don't be afraid to push the shoulder in so you can make the shoulders disappear. Rotate this way, buddy. So, here, you can see Jay's shoulder. Don't be afraid to push on that shoulder so you can get a good lock that makes his shoulder disappear, okay? He goes to yank out, knees to chest. He goes to stand up, bully his way out of the hole. It's tough, okay? You've got an excellent control of this guy. The whole time, you're looking to form angles by pulling your ear to his ankle or his knee. And then from here, the adjustments to the figure of four are relatively easy. Okay, so one more time. We have a training partner and our closed guard. From closed guard situation, we find our training partner's wrist. Once we come in here and we're looking to control our training partner at the collar. We start working our legs up high. We get the hand out, boom, trap triangle. We force the hand in, hips go out, lock, trap triangle. We cover up the shoulders. He goes to pull away from us, standing up, yanking, trying to work his way out. And from here, we're finding those angles that make the transition to figure four easy. Okay? So we're always looking to create either pressure in off the collar or pressure out and away. And then we just thread our legs into the trap triangle. We'll show you what to do from there. Now, we're portraying the trap triangle as an excellent method to control someone out of closed guard. And we can flick our legs up and lock that trap triangle. Even very short-legged athletes on broad-shouldered opponents can realistically hold people for long periods of time, control their movement, and then start to go into submissions. Let's look now at the transition, probably the most important one of them all, from trap triangle to figure four triangle. So we're going to go from a method of controlling people to a method of strangling people. So, smoothing out this transition. We've seen one of our favorite ways to operate from here is to go in and stuff the wrist. If we stuff the wrist, I need to get my hips outside of the point of his elbow. So we scissor, and then we take our leg right over the top and lock. Once we get into this position, we lock the strangle leg on bottom. That way, I have the minimum movement required to make a transition. If I put the strangle leg on top, halfway through, I'm going to have to untangle my legs in order to get to the figure four triangle. So start with the strangle foot on bottom. Next thing is to get over our training partner's shoulder. Rotate this way, buddy. So that you cannot see the shoulder. It's obscured by my legs. From this position, no need to hold on to the arms now. It's not helping. Our whole thing now is to use our arms to get angle on our opponent. Jay, just rotate a little bit more this way, quarter turn this way. Now, see this knee of Jay's? I want to get my tailbone outside that knee. That's going to help me to get angle. So the first thing I do is I raise my hips and I just shrug to the outside so that my tailbone points out here in the distance and it gets outside of this knee. When Jay goes to square up, move around, pull away, etc., it's tough for him. Now I want to use this hand, the same side as my strangle leg, to find angle. Jay, rotate this way. Okay, you got two choices. If you just need a small angular change, hook here underneath the arm. If you're looking for a big angular change, hook here inside the leg and bring your ear to his knee. This is the preferred one. Once you get to this position, you'll see my feet still haven't uncrossed. When Jay goes to yank out, it's tough. You got great control. Now, I just extend my leg and then I corkscrew my feet. Extension, corkscrew. So that my feet are locked throughout the whole duration. If my feet are unlocked, you have to rely on the pull in the head to hold them in place. If we lock our ankles, now go to pull up, stop. Now I extend and corkscrew and we lock. If necessary, we grab our own heel. Don't grab your shoelaces, you can hurt yourself. Grab your heel and pump your legs to lock it up tight. Now Jay can do whatever he wants to get out of here. It's not going to help. And we strangle for the finish. So once again, starting from a different angle, close guard situation. We get to a given wrist, we get to our training partner's collar. If we push out, then we scissor our hips the opposite way to facilitate kicking over. From here, strangle foot goes on bottom. You can see a lot of shoulder there. That's good for Jay, bad for me. So we start stuffing the shoulder, okay? And we bring our legs over the top to obscure it. When he tries to pull away, pull in with your knees, lock him in tight. It's like a very high guard. He's going to be doing everything he can to push your knee off and do all those things that people do. Make sure your knees pinch. He goes to shrug me off, go Jay. We pull in with the knees, we make it hard for him. We catch underneath our training partner. We lift our hips and get outside of his knee. If necessary, I'll scoop inside his leg. He goes to yank out, it's tough, it's hard. We extend and then corkscrew. If necessary, we hand adjust using the heel. If he stands up, grab inside the ankle, pull your ear to his ankle. Rotate this way, Jay. No. Look at your knee relative to his shoulder. Your knee underneath his shoulder. If your knee's over the top of the shoulder, it's less efficient. This is where you want to be. Then close it and it's done. Okay? This is the way that you want to make your transition from trap triangle into figure four triangle. That's how you go from holding people to strangling them. Now, we're trying to impress upon you the idea that the trap triangle is one of the best methods of controlling people from closed guard whenever you can't get dramatic advantages of height or angle. We've seen how to get into the trap triangle. We've seen how to transition from a trap triangle to a figure four triangle and start strangling people. A common complaint I will get from students is, hey, I'm a little shorter, my legs are short, thick, my training partners have broad shoulders. It's really hard for me to transition from the trap triangle, which is pretty easy even for short-legged athletes to use, to a figure four triangle, which is a little more challenging for people with short, thick legs. Don't worry, there's still great moves you can do from here. Let's look at two versions of arm locks, which I often coach to my athletes whenever they're dealing with people who are either very broad in the shoulders or if they've got short legs, like someone like me, for example. And you can be very effective from a trap triangle using these arm lock methods. Let's start off with a training partner in our closed guard. We've seen that from closed guard situation, a simple way for us to get into the trap triangle is to create a dilemma around our training partner's wrist. We're either going to push in which case we're going to hip out and throw our leg over the top, or if I get resisted in the push in, I'll push out, get my wrist higher than his wrist, and we'll scissor our hips the opposite way so that we can kick over the top, and lo and behold, we're into the trap triangle, okay? Once we get here, we're always looking to cover our training partner's shoulder, and then we ask ourselves one simple question. Are they on their knees or are they standing? Let's look at the kneeling situation first. If my opponent is on the knees, I will take my tailbone outside of their knee. Let's rotate this way. Here's Jay's right knee. If my hips are inside his knee, that's no good for the move we're about to hit. We want to elevate and go over his knee and get our tailbone outside of it. Once we're there, we're going to tuck our training partner's wrist underneath our armpit. Presumably at this point, he's going to be strongly resisting, moving around. We're going to look to catch our training partner either under the arm or inside the leg. Inside the leg is always my favorite. And then from this position, we just take our leg and we just slip the leg over the top into three-quarter juji. It's not just any three-quarter juji, it's three-quarter juji with the hand trapped behind my lat muscle. So when my opponent goes to defend himself, he can't even lock his hands together. If the hand was in front, then he can defend himself, okay? But when the hand's behind the lat muscle, there's no defense. He tries to posture up, do all those things that people do. It's so difficult. And then from here, it's a very, very strong arm lock, okay? So, once again, we have an opponent in our closed guard. We do a good job of kicking up into trap triangle. We do a good job of maintaining that trap triangle. He's posturing up, making things hard for us, and we take his wrist and put it in behind. From here, we start forming a good angle on this guy. Then we slip the leg over the top, crossing our ankles. In this case, it's a three-quarter juji, so it's good to cross our ankles, as opposed to a regular juji gatame where we are pretty reluctant to cross our ankles here. This is a three-quarter juji, so we do cross our ankles. He goes to yank his arm out. It's really, really difficult. Even very short-legged athletes can get to this position quite easily. Now from here, we just arch up and we've got our finish. So once again, from a situation where we feel it's very hard for us to go into the figure four triangle and start squeezing. If we can't get to the figure of four, we just take our training partner's wrist and punch it underneath our armpit, just like so, hiding the fist in behind the lat muscle. Then we start hunting for angle. The leg comes over the top, ankles cross, feet down. He goes to peel out of here. It's really, really difficult. There's tremendous pressure on your training partner's elbow and it's done, okay? Now, this is when they're on two knees. Now let's look at the situation where our training partner stands up. This is one of my all-time favorite arm locks out of triangles. From a situation where we start off closed guard and we fire our body up into the trap triangle position, we see our training partner go to stand. We feel for whatever reason, usually because he's very broad-shouldered or you've got short, thick legs, that transitioning to a stranglehold is difficult. No problem. We punch the wrist behind our armpit. From here, rotate this way, Jay. Nope. I keep my trap triangle. I do not adjust the figure four. I just keep my ankles crossed. I scoop inside my training partner's legs. Let's rotate. Now, watch what I do with my legs. I do not go to three-quarter juji. I just cross my ankles and I compress the crown of his head with my two knees. Okay? Even very short-legged athletes can easily hold this position on very broad-shouldered people. When he goes to yank out, my 2 feet pull down. Try to posture up, Jay. It's very, very difficult. Then we just hip in and it's done. This is a very, very tight form of arm lock. Opponents find very difficult to get away from. From another angle, closed guard situation, we go through and capture our training partner's head. From here, we've got the trap triangle. He goes up to his feet. Because he goes up to his feet, an excellent option is to stuff the wrist in behind the armpit. It's easy now to scoop inside the leg. I just take my knee to the crown of his head. So when he tries to posture up, there's so much weight over his head, it's so damn difficult for him. My feet bite down, back heeling, both of them together, strong, Jay, pulling away. And then from here, we just arch in and it's done, okay? These are very, very realistic ways for short, thick-legged athletes to employ the trap triangle in realistic fashion against broad-shouldered athletes. These are the best friend for shorter athletes fighting broad-shouldered athletes, a common complaint associated with figure four triangles. Use arm locks, okay? If they're on two knees, use the three-quarter. If we find our opponent standing up, just squeeze your two knees around the crown of your opponent's head, and you will find these are very difficult arm locks for your opponents to defend. When you look at the attacks that we've looked at so far in this video, you'll see that the overwhelming majority of them had a common feature. And that feature is that when we work from a closed guard situation, our opponent's hands are in front of our chest. That means two important things. First, if I go to attack a given hand, he can always use his other hand to support the one that's being attacked. Okay, so if I go for an arm bar on his right arm, his left arm will form a kind of defense to it. If I try to push a hand through for a triangle, he'll thwart me by bringing his hands close together. The second thing is that when I have the hand here on my chest, the only grip that I can have on my opponent's arm is going to be with my hands. It's going to be my hands versus his arms. Now, no matter how strong you are, your hands are relatively weak compared to the rest of your body. Okay, so we've got two serious problems involved in these situations. First, if the hand is on my chest, he can always access his own hand, okay, and form defenses. Secondly, the only thing forming a connection between us here is my hands on his arm. This stands in contrast to situations where we put the hand behind our back. Now, when he tries to lock his hands together, my torso is in the way. It's hard for him to access his hands now. It would be foolish for him to try and reach across my body and access his own hand. That would set him up immediately for an arm lock. Okay, so it's not really realistic for him now to start grabbing his own hand. So a big part of his initial defense is gone. Secondly, I'm no longer holding him with my hands, I'm holding him with my arm. So when he goes to yank his arm out, it's significantly more difficult now than it is in situations where I'm just holding with my hands. My arm is much stronger than my hand. So this grip, the elbow overhook, where we lock around our training partner's elbow with something like an overhook, is a very, very strong and effective way of controlling opponents. When they go to yank out, it's not so easy. Okay, presumably his arm will be somewhat bent, and we're locked in here around our training partner's elbow. He tries to access his own hands. He'd be an idiot if he even tried, because he'd be giving me an arm bar on the opposite side arm. Okay, so we can't really realistically lock his hands. And at the same time, when he goes to physically yank out, it's more difficult now. The lock is just above the elbow, but close to the elbow. This is not a conventional overhook where I come up to the shoulder. Okay, we're further down, so it's an elbow overhook. Your forearm just above your training partner's elbow. Now, with this advantage in mind, first advantage, it's much harder for him to pull away. Second advantage, you can't use one hand to defend the other. This is going to be a very useful arm lock grip. The only problem is, when I lock in this fashion, I kind of lock myself in place, and it can be quite difficult to turn around our training partner and get the leg over the head. So that's the theoretical problem with it. It has the advantage that it's a much stronger grip. Your opponent can't get access of one hand to the other, but it has the disadvantage that now you limit your own hip rotation. So when my training partner's on two knees, we get around the problem of limited hip rotation by switching from the conventional armbar, where my leg is underneath my training partner's armpit, to a 3/4 Judogatami armbar, where my leg goes over the neck. This helps my hips to rotate more easily, so we can get around the problem associated with elbow overhooks. The elbow overhook, as we've said, limits our ability to move the hips. So instead what we do is we shove the arm in and we throw our leg over our training partner's neck. This makes it much easier for me to turn. And now we can get adequate angle. When Jay goes to yank out, it's very, very difficult. Your whole leg locks up behind his shoulder. Now we just pass the leg over the top. He tries to yank out. It's very, very difficult. And you get a very sharp arm lock. Okay? You're also going to find, much to your pleasure, that the nature of the arm lock itself is tighter because you have an extra fulcrum with your forearm behind your training partner's elbow. So when you go to apply the lock, it comes on very, very quickly upon your opponent. Let's show it from another angle. Okay, first, let's just break down the significance of this move. Well, why is it an important move for you to learn? Well, we've seen that the vast majority of moves from closed guard involve us using our hands to control our training partner's arm. And this has two serious defects. The first, at any moment, he can lock his hands together, and as a result form strong defenses to any arm lock or triangle that I try to attack him with. Secondly, your hands are not very strong. So when he just yanks his arm as hard as he can, it's hard to hold on to it. This stands in contrast to an elbow overhook. Now when he tries to lock his hands, it's really hard to get through my torso. And if he was a moron and tried to reach across, well, he'd be surrendering his opposite hand to an easy arm lock. When he just goes to violently rip his arm out, he can do it, but it's damn difficult. okay? The only disadvantage of this grip is it tends to lock me in place. It's so tight that it's hard for me to move. It's hard for him to move, it's also hard for me to move. So conventional arm bars tend not to work so well. When the guy's on 2 knees, you're much better off stuffing the wrist and throwing the leg over the neck, because now you don't have to move so far. From this position, we just scoop inside our training partner's legs. I like to put my knee initially right here. Turn around. I'd like to put my foot on his back so that my knee blocks behind his tricep. When he tries to yank out, it's really tough. It's not easy at all. And from here, we just flip the leg over the head, cross our ankles, and because I have that extra fulcrum underneath his elbow, when he tries to pull away from you, it's a very tight arm lock. Comes on very quickly. So, if I just went for Jiu-Jitsu 101 arm lock on someone who's expecting it, he just goes to yank out, you often lose it. Even if you did get to the arm bar, he can lock his hands defensively and cause a lot of problems for you. Once you understand that, you might be interested in this idea of an elbow overhook. Now when he goes to lock his hands, very, very difficult. Okay? It's relatively easy for us now to throw our leg up over the top. He tries to yank out, stay down. We'll deal with the standing opponent later. We scoop inside, we get all the way in. He tries to yank out, and then it's on. Once it's on, you have that extra fulcrum behind his elbow, so that when we hip in, it's an enormously tight arm lock. Okay? I'm a big proponent of elbow overhooks. I think they really add something to your closed guard attacks. It's always been a strange thing to me. You don't see them used more often. I think they're a very, very effective means of attacking out of closed guard. We've just looked at the case of a kneeling opponent. Next, we'll look at the case of someone who stands up in our closed guard. We just looked at the idea of an elbow overhook. This is a very, very useful attacking grip that perhaps should be used more in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu. We looked at it in the case of an opponent who was kneeling down in our closed guard. But as we've pointed out several times in this video, we must learn to be effective against standing opponents, because your better opponents typically will be looking to stand up in your closed guard so they can open it and initiate passing. Let's now look at the case of the elbow overhook on a standing opponent. I've got some good news for you. Unlike the case where they were kneeling, it's much easier to move your hips, because when they stand up, they give you an ability to move left and right, which you don't have when they're kneeling down on the ground. So I typically find the elbow overhook is an easier method of attacking with the when someone is standing over us than when they're kneeling. Let's have a look at this. Okay, we have an opponent in our closed guard. We punch through and around, and we get to the elbow overhook. As we see our training partner go to stand, I don't want him to stand up to vertical, so we catch him right there by the head. As he stands up to his base, we now have him in a situation where he's trying to posture up on you, and your arm will be lengthening as he fights his way out, but you still have that good grip to work with. Okay. Now, I don't want him getting up to vertical posture, but the good news is, as long as I maintain the elbow overhook, go to vertical, it's actually pretty hard. What you typically find is they can get up to about halfway, and that's actually good for you. Okay. Now, I don't care what they're doing with their second hand, pushing or trying to open your guard or what have you, it doesn't really matter. From here, we're going to take our arm around our training partner's leg, anywhere from the knee to the ankle. Now, guys, every arm bar you've ever done in your time in Jiu-Jitsu, you always learned to put a foot on your training partner's hip or some such mechanism as that to get your hips out to the side. And the whole idea is you get your hips out first and you arm bar second. Okay, you've been doing that all your time in Jiu-Jitsu, and there's a reason for that, because it's a very good way of operating. You don't do it in the case of an elbow overhook. Okay, from here, we're going to scoop inside our training partner's leg, just like so. And from this position, we're going to go directly from a closed guard to a cross face. Okay, this is breaking all the rules of Jiu-Jitsu. We're supposed to normally get our hips out first and then attack. We're not going to do that. We're just going to take our leg directly and place our foot across. in what looks to be an atrocious looking armbar. Okay, we've done, as I said, we've broken all the rules. We're supposed to get our hips out first and form a nice attacking angle. We're not doing that here at all. We just put this ugly looking crossface in place. Now I use the crossface to gain my angle. I push, make a strong resistant body. I push against my training partner's head, and the crossface gives me angle after the fact. And we end up right here. Now when he goes to yank out, he's in an elbow overhook. When we hip in on our training partner, it comes on very, very quickly as a result. Okay, so this is quite an unorthodox form of armbar. Normally in an armbar, you have the hand in front of your chest, you form an angle first, and you armbar second. Here we have the hand behind your back. We throw the cross face first, and the hips come out last. The exact opposite of everything we've ever done before. Okay, you might be saying, well, why? Because of the nature of the grip. It's hard for you to get your hips out first in this case. Just throw your leg over the top and let the elbow overhook work its magic for you. It's a very strong and resilient grip. Have faith in it. Lock it, grip, throw the leg, and let your body catch up after the leg. I know it looks ugly as hell, but don't worry. So we start off, training partner in front of us. They stand up. We come through, and from here we punch in to the elbow overhook. I don't want this guy going completely vertical on me. So often we hold him down. But have some faith, guys. That elbow overhook is going to hold him, it's going to put a limit on how much he can posture up. If I had no overhook, he can go to vertical posture very easily. With an elbow overhook, it's not as easy as it looks. It's a pretty strong grip. Now from here we catch inside our training partner's leg. Ordinarily, we would put feet on the hips, get our hips out, and do the conventional thing. It's not necessary here. This overhook does all the work for you. Okay, so all I do is I just pull in with my legs, then in one motion I just throw my leg over the top, and after the leg comes in as a crossface, then we get our hips out to the side. When Jay goes to yank his arm out, it's not as easy as it looks. He can't lock his hands hand to hand. It's very hard for him to access his own hands. And when he tries to pull the arm free, that elbow overhook it's a menace. It's really hard to work away from. And then from this position, we drive our hips up, and there's that added fulcrum behind the elbow for a strong finish. Let's look at it from another angle. Close guard situation. We punch in, we get to the elbow overhook, training partner goes to stand up on us. From a direct close guard situation, we lock up, we scoop inside our training partner's leg. I bring my knee back, I fit my leg over my training partner's head. Looks terrible. This looks like a white belt armbar going on here. Okay, now use the crossface to get proper body position. I just go from here to here. When he goes to yank out, it's not as easy as it looks. And from here, the legs come down, the hips come up, and it's done. We're going to show you with our backs to the camera so you can see this weird angular shift that occurs in this move. Okay, conventional armbar. Guy stands up. We control our training partner. We put a foot on the hip, and the hips go out first, and the armbar goes on last. Okay, different now. We come around our training partner, we catch, and then directly from this position, we fit the crossface first. Then the crossface is what carries my legs out to the side, and we're in place. He goes to yank out. It's really, really tough. Then we just hip in, and it's done. You've got that added fulcrum behind your training partner's elbow. It makes it very tight arm locks. This is an excellent and realistic way to use this powerful grip, the elbow overhook, to your advantage with arm bars on both kneeling and standing opponents. My recommendation to you is, when they're on their knees, use a 3/4 duty gatami. Reminding you again, 3/4 duty is where the leg goes over the neck instead of the conventional underarm. Okay? On the knees, this will enable you to turn more easily. There's less space on the knees. So I'm going to recommend you use the 3/4 juji when they're kneeling. When they're standing, no need for that. Because they're standing, there's more room around the hips. And as a result, You can just go directly into the elbow overhook Jujigatame armbar. When they go to yank out, the legs are pulling down, the hips are coming up, and there's your finish. Okay? Jay will tell you, you really feel that extra fulcrum through your forearm and wrist behind the elbow joint. So when you hip in, it's a very sharp arm lock. These arm locks get you around two of the biggest problems associated with arm bars from guard. The fact that first, your opponent can always join his hands together to defend himself, figure fours or locked hands. And secondly, because the hand is in front of the chest, no gi, they can often rip their arm free. You start using the elbow overhook, you suddenly find they can't lock their hands together. It's way more difficult to pull the arm out. And you get this rather curious looking arm bar, which seems to go in the reverse order from normal. You throw the cross-faced leg first, and the hips come out last, reversing the normal order of things. You'll notice as we've been through this closed guard video that essentially the single biggest theme that we're trying to push on you is that every battle from closed guard is a battle over posture. You typically are trying to break your opponent's posture mostly in a forwards direction, but sometimes in a backwards direction. Okay, if you can break your opponent's posture, if you can make his hands touch the ground, if you can put his butt on the ground, if you can get chest-to-chest positions, etc., etc. If you can break your opponent's posture, the chances of you getting into a dominant position are very high. And if you get into a dominant position from underneath, you got a very good chance of finishing your opponent. That's really the biggest theme of this video. A natural question for you to be asking is, okay, what if I'm fighting someone who's really good? And I just can't break their posture. I try my best. I gave it an honest try. I'm pulling with my knees, etc., etc. And the guy's like a stone wall. And he just stands up and gets away from me. Well, what do I do? That's where you have to start to understand the golden rule of posture. This can be stated very simply. The only way your opponent can win the battle for posture inside your closed guard requires that he leave his legs behind him. Think about it. If I'm inside someone's closed guard and I'm being pulled forward, everything is my upper body moving up and away from him. The only way my upper body can move away from my opponent and posture up is to leave my legs behind, regardless of whether I'm on my knees or whether I'm standing. Again, if I'm being pulled forward into a closed guard and I start breaking grips and I take my upper body away from him, the only way this is physically possible is by leaving my legs behind. And you're going to notice two immediate effects of this. The first effect is your opponent's legs will become longer. The more he postures up, the longer his legs get. And long legs are easy to break. Those are the legs you want to be going after with your leg locks. The second thing is his weight will go back onto his heels. And when someone's weight goes back onto their heels, they're very easy to sweep backwards. If I can't pull them forwards and I'm losing that battle, I'll knock them backwards. And these are the two key elements that I want you guys to think and to live by out of closed guard. If you lose the battle for posture, you're going to win the battle via submission on leg locks, or you're going to knock your opponent back onto his butt. That's so important. I'm going to say it again. Every battle from closed guard is essentially a battle for posture. The only way your opponent can win the battle and make you lose it is to leave his legs behind. There's no ambiguity about this. You can say it with mathematical certainty. And the two effects, when they leave those legs behind, their legs are going to get longer, which makes the leg locks relatively easy. And the weight's going to go on the heels, which makes knocking him backwards with sweeps relatively easy. If you can just keep this simple thought in mind, you will never fear losing the battle for posture again. You will see losing that battle as just an opportunity to win the next battle. With that in mind, let's have a look at this. Okay, Placido's here on my closed guard. For most of the attacks that we've looked at in this video, they initiate with some kind of grip and pull. Most of the time, we're looking to take people in a forwards direction. We get a grip on our opponent's body that takes away his posts, and then we pull with a combination of legs mostly and arms secondarily. Placido soon we'll figure this out, and you will get pullback reactions as he goes to posture up and away. Okay, this becomes even more pronounced when people do the right thing in your closed guard and stand up. As they go to stand in your closed guard, you are typically looking to pull in with your legs. As you feel that strong pullback reaction, they start building up to vertical and you lose the battle for posture. The weight goes on to the heels and the legs get long. Okay, this is going to make it relatively easy for you to start to pitch into leg lock attacks, and when the weight is on the heels, knocking people in a backwards direction and starting putting them down into sweep territory. Okay, we'll be looking at a bunch of ways which we can sweep people backwards and enter into legs. So your first element here is an element of understanding. Understand first, almost every battle out of closed guard begins as a battle for posture. The vast majority of what we do initiates with a pull. You're going to get strong pullback reactions where your opponent tries to build to vertical posture. The best of your opponents will do it on their feet. Some of them will do it on their knees, but the best ones will do it on their feet. In these situations, when you feel you've lost that battle, that doesn't mean you've lost the war. It just means you fight and win the next battle. And that next battle will be fought downstairs. Because the only way your opponent can take away his upper body is to leave his lower body. And two things will happen when he does it. The legs are going to get long, making leg locks easy, and the weight's going to go on the heels, making sweeps to the rear easy. Once you understand this, you'll always have a clear sense of direction as to what to do next time you lose a battle over posture. Once you start to lose the battle for posture and your opponent goes up into vertical, he's going to start opening your closed guard. This whole video, of course, is about the subject of closed guard, but we've got to be realists too. We can't just think, oh, I'm always going to be able to hold my guard closed as long as I feel like it. That's not the case. You've got a skilled opponent going against you. He's going to stand up and open your guard at least 50 to 60% of the time. So we have to be effective in situations where you feel you've lost the battle for posture and this guy's about to open your closed guard. My advice to you is, if you can get a sense that you've lost the battle for posture and this guy's about to open your closed guard, don't wait for him to open your guard. You go first. Be preemptive. Go in there and open your own guard so you open your guard on your schedule, not on his schedule. Okay, let's have a look at this right now. And Placido does a good job of defeating my attempts to break his posture forward, and he stands up successfully. Once he starts building up to vertical posture, okay, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out it's going to be hard for me to prevent someone my own size and skill level from opening my guard now. He's in a very good position now. He can start using 2-on-1 grips on a knee, or he can use the reach back method to hook inside my ankles. Once he starts hammering away at my closed guard, if I wait for him to open the guard, I lose a tactical advantage. When Placido opens my guard, he has inside position here with the hand and here with the elbow, so that when he splits my guard, he gets into a situation where he controls the space between my knees. This gets worse and worse as his knee gets lower and lower to the ground. Now, here's a simple test for you. If you want to say, do I control the space between the knees? Here's this simple acid test for you. Ask the guy on bottom, can you bring your knees together? I can't. I couldn't bring my knees together if I wanted to at this point. Placido owns all the real estate between my two knees. His whole torso, his hips, and one of his knees, and one of his hands are inside my knees. So when I try to bring my knees together, I can't even begin to do it. So how the hell am I going to fight from guard from here? Placido will have a massive advantage now. As he comes forward, he can access my head, and it just goes from worse to worse. And the whole time we're here, I can't even bring my damn knees together. Forget about play guard. It's gone. Okay? Why did it all go south so quickly? Because I operated on his schedule. I waited for him to open my guard, so he had the tactical beat on me. I was following his dance lead. And it's hard to win fights that way. Okay? You can't let people dominate the space between your knees. That will shut down and ruin your guard faster than anything else. So if I'm going to open my guard, I'm going to do so in a way where I initiate, so he's operating on my schedule, not his. And secondly, I'm going to protect the space between my knees. So, when someone goes to stand up, and I can see them going into vertical, I'm going to get a connection here at their knee. At this point here, Placido's shoulders are above his hips. He's got effective posts, and I can feel I can no longer break him forward. Okay? I've decided now there's so much pressure on my feet, my crossed ankles behind his back, that I'm no longer controlling with my legs. I'm only controlling with my two ankles. That's terrible. Okay? I want to be able to hook and control people with my knees, not my damn ankles. By the time we get to the ankles, I'm inside my head. There's an internal dialogue saying, "Let's open now." Okay, we've gone beyond an acceptable point, and it's time for me to start opening. If my guard's going to open, it's going to be on my terms. So when we decide to open, we're going to take our two legs and bring our knees together, so that he will never dominate the space between my knees. I put my knee just inside his, and my two knees are close together. If Placido dropped at this point and tried to dominate the space between my knees, he would not do so. The sacred space between your knees is protected, okay? As opposed to here, where he can easily separate the knees, and now my entire attempt to use guard is destroyed at that point, okay? So our whole thing is to drop into a position like so, where the space between the knees is protected. And from here, we're going to find it very easily to start pummeling our legs in. And now I can dominate the space between Placido's knees. That's ultimately what the battle is all about. Who controls the real estate between the knees? Once I get X guard, Placido, try to bring your knees together.
Very challenging.
Can't do it. Okay, and now it comes down to who's going to dominate the space between the other athlete's knees. If I let Placido keep my knees facing up to the ceiling and drop between them with his torso and hips, he wins everything. But if I first bring my two knees together, form an angle, and then get into a classic X-guard position, I dominate the space between his knees. And that's when I can start winning from bottom position. We'll look exactly how in just a short time. Don't worry, we'll come to it. But you have to understand this first point. Okay, when the guard gets open, it's a fight for the space between the knees of the two athletes. He wants to dominate the space between my knees. I want to dominate the space between his knees. How are we going to do it? And how are we going to win most of the time? By going first, so that we're operating on my schedule, not his. If I wait for Placido to open my guard, it's too late. He's boom, straight in. Look how easily Placido. When you open my guard, use the 2-on-1.
2-on-1?
Yeah, you use the classic 2-on-1 and drop immediately into, and don't let me bring my knees together. Okay, so I'm going to go on Placido's schedule now. So as he goes up, it's like, man, I got shut out. Okay, I waited too long. I let Placido lead the dance, and by the time he got the hand inside, I couldn't close my knees. I couldn't bring them in together, and as a result, I'm almost certainly going to be passed in that situation. Okay, if someone dominates the space between your knees and gets chest to chest, good luck trying to stop it from passing. It's going to be tough, man. Now let's contrast that with Placido standing up, and I get a good sense that, okay, this guy's good. He goes up in vertical, boom, and we're in here. Okay, even if Placido tried to throw his hips forward and expose my leg, all that does is give me access to the back of his legs. Okay, it's not going to help him. So you've got to protect the integrity of your knees. And the best way to do that, go first. Preempt the other guy. When you can just feel in your heart that your guard's about to be open. The guy's getting vertical, he's in good posture, he feels like a mountain inside your guard. You can't break him forward. His hands are going in the right place. Go first. Hook inside his leg and protect that vital space between your knees. Okay, and you'll have a lot more success as a result. A common theme when people come in and talk jiu-jitsu when they visit from other schools, they will say to me, John, I'm afraid to use closed guard against your students because of leg locks. I feel like if I wrap my legs around them and they open my guard, I'm a sitting duck for leg locks. You can you can see why they think this. If I have a closed guard and Placido stands up, and from here, my knees face the ceiling, it's so easy for Placido to put a knee inside, and just rock back, and from here, boom, straight into Ashigarami. Okay, because my knees are facing up. It was just so easy for him. Okay, but it doesn't have to be that way. Whenever someone goes to stand up and you know what their intentions are in terms of leg locking, again, it comes down to that question: will they be able to fit their torso and hips inside your knees? Will your knees make it easy for them by continuing to face up to the ceiling? If I know someone's intentions are to leg lock me in this position, my whole goal is to get inside position with one of my knees. I scoop inside my training partner's knee, and then immediately when I turn, I drop my knee inside his. Okay? Even if I had no hands now, my hands came out. If Placido goes to sit back for a leg, you'll see the only one he can sit back for is my left. The right is too short, and my knee is inside his knee. But look what happens when Placido sits back for this one. I dominate the space between his knees. So when he goes to close the Ashigarami, my two knees are in. Okay? Even if Placido tries to work, I have a foot on his stomach, and it's so easy for us to thread out, and then from here we go right back into our counterattacks and work. Okay? It becomes impossible when I play with short legs with a knee in the inside position. Let's demonstrate this again.
It just feels awkward.
Yeah, Placido is 100% correct about this. If I was in his point of view and I stood up, I wouldn't even try it because it just feels hopeless from the start. The leg position just isn't there. The only time it's easy for Placido is when my two knees separate and I'm sloppy with my guard break and my knees face upwards. That's when it's as easy for Placido to sit back, Placido, and it's just so easy for him. Okay? Now let's contrast that with a situation where Placido goes up and vertical. I know what he wants. I can see him starting to get ready to rock back for the legs. Placido, you go as fast as you can for the legs. I'll go as fast to stop. Go. Now he can go as hard as he wants for this leg. It means nothing. Just push with the second foot, and now you'll find yourself in a good position to counterattack, etc., etc. Okay? So, from another angle, Placido does a good job of building up the vertical posture. From here, I know what his intentions are. Maybe I've been scouting this guy. I know he likes leg locks versus closed guard. We immediately come in. Placido goes to fall back for the leg locks. You got a foot on his belly button, but even as he makes contact, you go straight through and out. Now from here, you'll be able to fall back in and go for your leg locks or come up and pass depending on what you want. Okay? So when we steal the inside position preemptively, right at the onset of the action, it's almost impossible for your opponent to take advantage of closed guard and go into simple leg locks. The vast majority of this video has been about the idea of attacking from closed guard. But let's be honest, you're going to face a lot of very tough opponents who are very good at posturing up, frustrating your attacks, winning the battle for posture, and building up and away from you. And as a result, we have to be effective in these situations. A big part of this is going to come down to how do you manage a tough opponent opening your closed guard. Our general contention is that we want to initiate. If we feel the guard is going to be open, we want to be the ones who open it. Don't wait for the other guy to open your guard. Open it yourself first, preempt your opponent, and you can start getting into good positions. We've seen how to deal with opponents who are looking to open up your closed guard and leg lock you. We've seen you can defend yourself quite simply against that kind of threat. Now let's look at the idea of someone who opens up your closed guard and is looking to quickly pass you. Okay, let's look at how this occurs. From a situation where we have a talented opponent who comes up and quickly gets control of posture and starts coming up. From Placido's perspective, what's ideal for him is to open up my closed guard and create a situation where my legs get dominated by him from the inside so that he can dominate the space between my knees. That means the further he comes forward, the easier it becomes for him to connect to my body, and there's very little I can do to stop him once the space between my knees gets shut down. So, whenever someone comes in to pass positions, when we go to open up our closed guard, again, we want to go first before they do it. we want to make sure we get some kind of entanglement with their legs. Okay? A good way for us to ensure this happens is to block inside their knee on one side, so that as we drop, we take our legs and go inside and put our foot right here in the hip. Then our second foot pommels in, and we now find ourselves entangled inside our training partner's legs. If Placido tries to pressure forward, hip in, do anything he wants from here, you have an adequate connection that now you control the space between their knees, and they're going to find it very, very difficult to go into guard passes. This stands in contrast to situations where my legs float around in the breeze, and now it's easy for them to pass either from the inside or to throw my legs out and dominate the legs from the outside. What we can never have is just no connection. Okay, that's when opponents find it very easy to start passing sequences. Okay, I want connection to my training partner's legs. So if he gets up and I just come out here with no connection, it's really easy for him to start passing. Okay, if I have no serious connection and he just pressures forward between my knees, that's a terrible thing as well. So as soon as our guard goes to open, we want to make sure we get meaningful connection to our training partner's legs. Here I have inside position with the knee, inside position with the foot. I can stay here on the outside, I can come in here to the inside. Regardless, now because my legs are connected to him, when Placido goes to move my legs around, it's threaded inside his. And I can generate off balancing, which will slant the playing field in my favor. So it's very important. The second we've opened up our guard, try to get some kind of meaningful entanglement into your training partner's legs. I personally always recommend Ashigarami and X-guard. I believe those are the two easiest to get to, they're the two fastest to get to, and they do the best job of controlling the space between your training partner's knees. So my recommendation to you is this. Someone goes to stand up in your closed guard and you can feel you're losing the battle. As soon as you feel that's happening, boom, Ashigarami. Okay, now you're in a place where you can start off balancing. People can make your life miserable. Alternatively, they go up, and from here we go straight in, and right away we're into X guard in situations where now he's reacting to what you've done. Okay, in my opinion, those are the two easiest, Ashigarami and X guard. They're the fastest to get into. They create a meaningful connection to your opponent's legs, and now he has to address what your legs are doing rather than just go in and start passing your guard. Now, we're looking at the question of opening a closed guard. The big theme we're trying to push on you is you want to be preemptive. You want to decide when your guard opens and you want to go first. That's the ideal, but as we've said many times in this video, jiu-jitsu and life in general usually isn't ideal. You're going to come up against tough opponents who do open your guard on their schedule, not yours. Okay, some days you're just not yourself. You're thinking about the VIP room of your local nightclub, and your opponent opens up the guard before you can initiate, and now you're following his lead in the dance. What are we going to do? You got to go back to your minimum goal. Your minimum goal can be stated in one simple sentence. Bring your knees to your chest. If Placido stands up in my closed guard and he opens my guard and I'm a day late and $1 short, I'm like, oh, I was supposed to open first and I fucked up and I didn't. Okay? I can never have extended legs like so. If I ever feel he opened my guard and he's in control of the action, bring your knees to your chest. Okay, so as he goes to pass from here, he's going up against shortened legs. I can never have situations where he opens the guard and my legs are extended, where my knees are beyond the line of my hips and my feet are extended out. That's where it's so easy for him to start manipulating my legs and passing. Okay, so if I make a tactical error and I allow him to open up my guard, you better believe the first thing is my knees, you'll be moving to obviously, my knees will be back to my chest. So we're in a good defensive position. Okay? So let's make it realistic, Placido. When you stand up and open, you'll be stepping back and start passing. So he does a good job of opening up my closed guard. As soon as I feel, boom, come in and our knees are in close. Why is this important? because it means he will never dominate the space between my knees. Okay? If my legs are in a state of extension, so that my feet are behind his hips, you don't even need to do that. Just put your hands inside my knees. Dominate the space between your knees. Okay? It's going to be a problem. Lie down, Placido.
You're a little private here.
Once I stand up to my feet and we come in, if Placido's feet are behind me, that is where I can dominate the space between the knees. Okay? What Placido needs to do is bring the knees to the chest. That means the only option I have is to go outside the legs. And you guys have been studying your guard retention tapes, you know how to defend that problem. Okay? But what you can't have is feet behind, because it's that which enables us to drop down and dominate the space between the knees. Okay? So once again, we have a training partner who does a really good job of getting posture and standing up. As they do so, they open our guard. We were supposed to open it first, but we screwed up and we can't get the optimal options, which are to go into leg locks or to form some kind of entanglement to sweep him. We feel him opening up our closed guard. Your minimum goal is knees to chest. The second your knees come in, now he can no longer dominate the space between your knees because it's just too close to my torso. That means his only option is to go around the outside. And you guys know how to deal with that and go to work. Okay? So your minimum goal, if you screw everything up and you're tactically a day late and a dollar short, he opens the guard, is to pull your knees back to your chest and don't let him dominate the space between your knees.